Anime has been around for many decades. Some are shit, and some are peak, but most of them are just mid. Today we're going to be taking a look at 7 anime that define a generation. But what exactly does it mean for an anime to define a generation? For the purposes of this video, I'm gonna say that for an anime to define a generation, it has to have either contributed significantly to a change in anime or anime production as a whole, given birth to or a significant rise to the popularity of a genre, or simply have contributed to furthering or increasing the popularity of the medium by bringing in a new generation of anime fans. Now with all that out of the way, let's go. We could only start this list here in the 60s with Tetsuo and Adam, also known as Astro Boy. Saying this anime defined a generation is honestly kind of an understatement. This anime proved that 30-minute long TV anime was actually possible to do, even with limited animators and resources. Now, I'm not gonna go so far as to say that without it we wouldn't have anime today, but Astro Boy and Osamu Tezuka definitely played a massively important role in shaping the medium in the early days. Moving up a decade, we find ourselves in the 70s. And when I think of massively influential 70s anime, there are a few that comes to mind. Galaxy Express 39 and Space Battleship Yamato are definitely some good choices. However, personally, I'd say that Ashita no Joe has to be one of the most generationally defining anime of this decade. While not being the first ever sports anime, just missing that title by coming out 1 year after Star of the Giants, it certainly has done the most to shape the genre. Ashita no Joe laid a foundation for what your typical sports anime story arcs would look like, and director Osamu Tezuka invented animation techniques that are still being used or mimicked to this day. I'm not gonna go into all of that here, but if you're interested in learning more about Tezuka's career and influence, I've got just a video for you, linked in the annotations and description. So go check that out after. Moving up yet another decade, we now find ourselves in the 80s, a decade where sci-fi and large men with larger muscles dominated. However, there is one show that I find absolutely impossible to get around when talking about defining a generation of anime and anime fans, and that is Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball. This show, as well as Dragon Ball Z, which started in '89, has been one of the go-to anime for kids and young teens for decades at this point. It really started to shift the trend away from sci-fi and towards the battle shonen that we would see dominate for a while. And considering the cultural relevance that this show still has to this very day, I couldn't exactly not include it here. Entering the 90s now, we would see that sci-fi and mechs would refuse to fully let go just yet. And that's because here, Hideaki Anno would release what is arguably his greatest masterpiece in Neon Genesis Evangelion. The staying power of this show is honestly impressive. It still to this day gets talked about and highlighted as one of the best anime ever made. There's still merch and pop-up stores and restaurants and cafe themes based on the show. And it even gave us a waifu debate that still in the year of our Lord 2026 has not been settled. But I'll settle it right now. Rei is best waifu. You're welcome. Now I know, it's a crime that I didn't put Pokemon here, considering the absolute cultural behemoth that franchise has been, and honestly still is. However, this is my video. I mostly go based on the anime, and I would argue that the Pokemon games have done more for the franchise popularity than the anime has. And also, I've always been more of a Digimon fan anyways, so suck it. Moving into the 2000s, I have decided to cheat a little. My choice for the generation-defining anime from this decade is One Piece. Now, if you know your One Piece, you'll know that it started in the 90s. However, I counter that by saying that it started in October of 1999. So because of that, it's basically a 2000 show. And a 2010 show. And a 2020 show as well, since it just kept going. But hey, at least Season 1 is ending soon, as it will switch from weekly releases to seasonal releases. But yeah, I couldn't in good faith make a video about generationally defining anime and not include arguably the biggest of the big three. What this show has done for anime in terms of getting in a new generation of kids interested in the medium honestly can't be understated. And I'm not even gleasing this show, I don't even particularly like One Piece, but its sheer popularity has to count for something. We have now entered the 2010s and are nearing the end of this list. At this point, it's starting to get a lot more difficult to pinpoint exactly what has and hasn't been a generation-defining anime. But in my opinion, there's 2 that stand out from this decade. Those are Sword Art Online and Attack on Titan. One show which is extremely divisive, and another whose ending is pretty universally disliked. But for my money, I have to pick Sword Art Online for the 2010s. And the reason is simple. You can almost entirely pin the blame of the rise of the isekai anime in your seasonal anime on SAO. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that SAO invented the isekai genre, because it didn't. But it sure as hell did a lot to increase its popularity and the popularity of light novel adaptations. Meanwhile, we're yet to see AOT introduce a new wave of Titan-based anime. I'm just saying. Now we have come to the final anime on this list, and we are looking at the most recent anime we can. And I'm not even gonna lie, this is pretty much entirely speculative on my part, because I'm basically trying to predict what anime will define what everyone else tries to copy in the future. That said, I do think there is one anime that in my opinion at least has the popularity to be the defining force of a generation. And that anime is Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. Frieren is not only putting in a massive effort for the revitalization of the fantasy genre, which has mostly been overshadowed with the more popular isekai subgenre in recent times, but it also significantly impacted anime as a whole by bringing in a whole bunch of new fans to the medium. I mean, the amount of people I've seen that didn't watch anime before, but ended up watching Frieren and has been hooked since, is honestly impressive. So because of that, I would argue that Frieren is the defining anime of the current generation of anime fans. At least for now. There's still 5 more years left of this decade, so something else could come out and absolutely blow Frieren out of the water. Only time will tell. Alright, that was 7 anime that in my opinion have defined a generation of anime and the fandom. But ultimately, these are just some of the ones that I could think of. There's still a lot more that you could argue for that I didn't include in this list. So I'm curious what you guys think are some generation-defining anime. Leave your suggestions in the comments and let me know how wrong my list is. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more anime-related content from me. Peace!